incredible talk by Mark Roberge. Thank you, Mark, so much for that. We have right now with us someone really incredible, Christina Garnett, Senior Marketing Manager, Offline Community and Advocacy at HubSpot. So Christina, we're so glad to have you here. Christina is a community builder and advocacy strategist. Christina Garnett uses audience intelligence and social listening to learn more about audiences, to determine needs, behaviors, and more. Her work serves to help brands better connect with their current customers, potential customers, and fans. So Christina, we are so glad to have you here today. Christina, I give the mic to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat and be a part of the Rev Genius GTM series. Specifically, want to talk about how community market fit is incredibly crucial. Community is such a big buzzword nowadays, and it's more important now than ever for you to have a good understanding of your community, what their needs are, what values they're looking for, and how to get started. So I am excited to really kind of give you this overall lens of what are the differences between product market fit, community market fit, and how you can start asking yourself key questions in either the ideation stage or the maintenance or scale phase of your community to make sure that not only do you have community market fit in the beginning, but you continue to strive to ensure that you are still having that fit. So some of the things we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about what exactly community fit, market fit is. Obviously, if you've been with us throughout the rest of the day and the other sessions, you have a really strong foundational knowledge of what product market fit is, how you can start using that for your current work, for future work, or for anything that you're thinking about. But we want to think about how community is different, how you can determine if fit even exists. And then when we're looking at that, what does that role and ROI look like for community? If you want to start a community, why do you want to start a community? What kind of ROI can you be thinking about? What kind of metrics and KPIs do we need to be considering when we're thinking about this kind of work? And if you're on this call and you're thinking about building a community and you don't know where to get started, we're going to have that conversation. So let's go ahead and get the elephant in the room. I know that this is specifically for a product market fit, but it's never more important to think about what community looks like, whether community is your product or whether community is that strategic advantage. If you're using community as a moat for your specific product, it's really important to think and consider what that looks like and how those things differ. So when we're thinking about this, we know the ground rules of product market fit. We understand that value prop, it needs to answer a clear need in the market. Obviously, your solution is really the answer to someone's question, something that they're currently challenged with. There's a lot of really great ideas, and there's a lot of buzz where they talk about businesses that are a solution in search of a need. They think they have a great solution because they think it's a great idea, they haven't really done that due diligence to make sure that there's actually people who need that, who would actually be able to utilize that to give them what they need. And so when we're thinking about this work, it's really incredibly important to look beyond the shininess of the idea itself. Is there actually a reason why this needs to exist? Is there someone who wants this? And is there someone who's willing to pay based off of that? And so when we're thinking about the product, we have to make sure that, the features may be great, but if it's not in line with the price that the market's willing to pay, then you're also not going to be successful. You really need to have that sweet spot, as it is, to make sure that the features that you're providing and the price that you're setting that product to aligns with what that market demand is, so that when they see your product, they know that's what it is and they can't wait to give you money. And then that rule of 40. If you were able to survey the majority of the people that are your customers, if not all of them, how many of them are in I absolutely have to have this product? How many of your products would survive if there is an economic downturn and price becomes an obstacle? How much value, how much need is there for your product that when there are variables, and there are always variables, that someone doesn't think, if I have to start cutting things, this is one of the products I'm going to cut. So that rule of 40 and figuring out, like, are 40% happy or 40% willing to cut your product if something were to happen or they weren't happy. And then NPS. Obviously, that voice of the customer is incredibly important, and making sure that you are doing regular checkpoints to determine how happy people are. You might think you're doing a great job, but you don't determine that. Your customers do. So making sure that you have a very strong feedback loop, you have an NPS schedule to ensure that you are essentially keeping yourself honest, that you understand what they're looking for and are you meeting those goals. So how's that different from community? Well, it's just slightly tweaked. When we're thinking about community, it's not that value prop, it's the community value prop. Is there, if you're building a community, is what your community providing what someone's needing? Now, your community may not have the same ROI or value that, say, a product does. A product is going to automate something for you, or it might make something easier for you. A community isn't necessarily going to do that. What community gives is more of an emotional value, belonging, network, tangible opportunities to connect with other humans. And so we really have this difference of emotional connectivity versus tech connectivity. And so when we're thinking about community, you really need to think about, how does value differ in this community, especially if you are leveraging community as a product, which we're seeing a lot in Web3 and NFT projects currently. And that value needs to align with the time investment. On the one side, we're thinking about price, we're thinking about features, we're thinking about what we're giving. But when we're thinking about community, community is an investment. I'm going to go into this space, whether it's online or whether it's in person, and I'm going to have to determine whether or not I'm able to do the desired behaviors and get the desired value that I want. Am I going to be able to connect with certain people? Am I going to be able to ask my questions? Am I going to be able to feel safe and understood? Am I going to be able to connect with other people? And for community, yes, you have that 40% for product where they might leave if there's a downturn, or you might be the first thing to cut if there's an economic crisis. But for community, you have to not only get them to come once, you need to get them to return. So it's incredibly important to figure out, what does it look like? What triggers do you need to be able to get someone to join? But then how do you get them to return? It's a lot easier to get someone to join something with all the promises of what they can do there. It's a lot harder to get them to return once they've seen what's under the hood, once they've had that member experience. And then that voice of the customer. NPS is going to be the same for both. You need to make sure that you're constantly having the voice of the customer, the voice of the community member at the heart of everything that you're doing. It doesn't matter how good a job you think you're doing. If they are not happy, if they are not getting the value that was intended for them, if they're not able to do things easily and conveniently and quickly or thoughtfully, that's going to be an indicator that you're really just not hitting the mark. So we know what those kind of things look like, but how do we actually determine it? What kind of variables are we looking at? When we're thinking about product market fit, you're probably used to seeing a Venn diagram. And with community market fit, it's not any different. The difference, though, is what those circles represent. What does that really come down to? So the thing is that you're always going to have people who are willing to spend money. They have a bucket of budget to be able to have set aside for whatever their needs are. This year, I need to spend this certain amount of money, and I'd like to earmark it for these specific projects. With community, yes, you can have tools, and yes, you can do things, but from a customer perspective, that's not what they're really paying you with. They're paying you with their time. And time is one of the most treasured things that we have. We have our time with family. We have our time with work. We have our time resting. We have our time eating. We have our time relaxing. We don't have necessarily these bucketed options, and time blocking is an option. I do time blocking all the time, but you don't have this, I have 12,000 hours that I can set aside for this specific activity. That's not how we think. And when you think about how your product is having to compete with anything else that can do that for you. With community, you are competing with anything that wants their time. You're competing with advertisers. You're competing with their kids. You're competing with the sports teams they like to watch. You're competing with the emails that they're getting. You're competing with social media. You're competing with anyone who wants to take their time and is promising them connection. And especially since COVID hit and everything that's happened since 2020, every single thing you see is people offering connection. We're in this together. We're all together. We're doing this. We're going to make events hybrid, or we're going to make events online. We're going to make our webinars so that we can record it so you can watch it later. We're going to have cohort education so you can connect that way. We're going to add you to a Slack channel so you can talk to people. Everyone that will give you their time has had someone else offer the exact same opportunity. And as buzzwords go, community has been a hot one. There's been a lot of people who want to offer you the opportunity to be able to connect with others, to be able to learn from each other, to be able to feel like you belong, to find your people, as it were. And so the thing is that you really need to think about what your community is truly competing with. Everything that takes time is your competitor. So for product, yeah, is it worth the price? Do the features give me enough value that it makes up for the price I'm paying? But community, is it worth the time? Is it worth the investment? And usually if you use a product, if you have one or two bad experiences, but you get support and you get the help you need, then that might be enough for you to stay, for you to come back. Community, it's not like that. If I go into a space and I don't feel comfortable, it's going to be very hard for me to shake that. It's going to be very hard for me to think, this is my place and I should keep trying. I should keep giving my time and hope it works. So when you're thinking about that community market fit, you really need to be incredibly empathetic. And you need to think about your personas and the people that you want in that room, whether that room is online, whether that room is in person. You really need to have a holistic view of what that time spent looks like for them and that they're choosing you. And then you need to treat them accordingly. How do you treat someone who gives you the investment of their time? That's priceless. So not only do you need to make sure that when they're in there, they're having a good conversation, they're having good connections, they're having a good member journey, you need to make sure that at all points they feel appreciated for being there, because they don't have to be. They could literally be doing anything else. So when we're thinking about that and we're thinking about what questions we need to ask to consider what this needs to look like, what does a community that you would spend your time in look like? We need to ask ourselves questions. We need to think about what is the value for them to join and what does it look like for them to return. A lot of brands will do this from swag, but swag is foundational. Swag is cold. Like, we have our hoodies, we have our Yetis, we have our caps, we have our laptop stickers, and that's great. But that isn't necessarily going to make me feel special over time. I get this single hit of dopamine that makes me feel loved, that might make me put something on Twitter or on Instagram. But if you give me swag a second time and a third time and a fourth time, each one means less to me. Each one makes me feel less valued. And now it just feels like that's the pattern. My relationship with you is I do this and you give me swag, instead of scaling those opportunities. So think about how you're going to go beyond swag, how you're going to go to really foster that relationship. So when we're thinking about this, you can do it from a brand perspective. So my value is my proximity to the brand. In this case, HubSpot community. What's the value that you can get from the HubSpot community and being a part of it? Well, there's swag, obviously, but you can get behind the scenes access. You get opportunities to do AMAs with our product team and leadership and all of these other things. You have opportunities to be able to talk, to potentially be an inbound correspondent. You have all of these things that can make you feel value besides here's a hat. Or it might be a country club model. It's not about the proximity of who built the community. It's based on the proximity of power, the proximity of clout, the proximity to the people who are in the room. where it isn't a matter of who built the community. What the value is, it's interlaced with who's in the community. So if you want to be in a part of group with CROs, or you want to be in a group with other CMOs, or you want to be with people that you probably have no other opportunity to be connected with, then we're looking at this country club model where you're in this community for proximity to the other people who would be involved. And for that, that's going to be more community led, where you're going to have peer networking and peer mentoring. You're going to have opportunities for those people to learn together, to grow together, and have a safe space where they wouldn't be able to ask other questions. If you're thinking about executive leadership and doing micro communities for that, a lot of them are very hesitant to join communities because they don't want to be pitched to. What steps are you taking to be able to create an environment where they feel like they can ask questions openly and they're not going to be pitched to, where they're able to just connect without this immediate ask? Thinking of those concerns and thinking about what value that looks like, whether it's proximity to the people or proximity to brand, is incredibly important when you're thinking about what matters, what motivates these people, what makes them want to have a bigger role. And when we think about the market need, that's going to tell us. We're going to do that deeper dive into that audience, and we're going to have to be intellectually curious. You really, at this point, to be a part of a community and to be a community manager or director, you really need to have this obsession with understanding the needs of the community and understanding that it's an ecosystem that you are constantly having to nurture and to navigate and to weed and to water. You constantly have to figure out what's missing, what needs to be enhanced, what opportunities are missing. And so you're not going to know that if you aren't doing those really strong audience deep dives. And do interviews, talk to people, ask them, do NPS, do those feedback loops, and set up an ecosystem of feedback. Set up a safe space where you can be a member and you feel comfortable saying what you don't like, not because you want to complain, but because you genuinely are a part of this community and you know it can be better. You know it can be optimized. And here, let me tell you how this could be a better experience. Some of the easiest ways to be able to really navigate that feedback is to be able to come from a place of, we know nothing's perfect. And if we have that mindset, it gives us the humility to know that we can be better and to grow accordingly and to bring those community members along for the ride. So thinking about what roles those people can play and what does the health currently look like? If you already have a current community, how are you determining health? What metrics do you look at to determine if this is successful, if people are happy, are people engaged? Is it meeting the goals that you have set? You need to have those things in place so that you really have this good gauge of what's working, what's not working, how can we be better? Excuse me. But that has to tie to your goals. You need to make sure there's alignment. And it needs to come down to why you're building things. Why are you putting things together? Why are you creating this experience to facilitate connection? So, what are the desired behaviors? When someone joins a community, what do you expect them to do? And how do you communicate that with them? How do you make it clear how you want them to be a part of the community? What's good and what's bad? What are the guidelines? Some of the best things that you can do for a community starting off is to have very clear guidelines. What does good look like? What does engaged look like? What does unhealthy look like? What does this person is a bad actor in the community look like? Knowing what that can essentially be manifested as in the community is a really great way for you to keep the health and to be able to just be very transparent with what the opportunities are and what things look like. Those rules really set that bumper for people so that they're able to understand how they can be a part of it. And thinking about those behaviors, if you have set goals for your business and say, look, this is a business community, and you have set goals, then think about what desired behaviors you would need to have community members do in order to see changes in those KPIs. So you're going to reverse engineer it. So, okay, this is my KPI. This is what I'm looking at to deem for success. Great. What behaviors do I need to encourage in the community in order to see us change in that KPI? Great. Now that I know what that desired behavior is, how can I make that desired behavior as easy as possible? How can I remove friction so that not only do they know how to behave and behave in that way, but I make it as easy as possible? They can know exactly what to do, but it's just tedious. And that's going to cut people off just in that action. Make it as easy as possible, remove friction, and work that way back. That's going to give you that alignment. But at the end of the day, by doing reverse engineering, you're putting that community member at the heart of what you're doing. So you're not chasing KPIs, you're chasing improvement for the community member experience that's going to drive those behaviors you want so you can hit those KPI metric changes that you want. And when we're thinking about that, if you're unsure of what even to do, what goals should I even align with this, then I want you to look at the CMX Spaces model. And what it does is it shows you the different parts of business value that community can actually provide. And so we're looking at support. Communities can answer questions and really kind of take a large lift off of your support team. They can help your product. They can tell you exactly what kind of product features they want. They can tell you what product features they need, if there's any bugs, if there's anything that needs to be different. Acquisition, they're going to be those ambassadors for you. They are going to champion you and they're going to drive referral traffic for you. They are going to get you new business so that you can acquire that new revenue. They're going to contribute. They're going to give UGC. They're going to help you write blogs. They're going to help you create. They're going to have a space for others to learn from them. Engagement. If you're doing all those other parts right, you're going to see that engagement. They're going to have this give and take in the community. People are going to ask questions. People are going to share. People are going to elevate others. They're going to learn together. They're going to grow together. And when you do all of that, that community that you facilitated helps them succeed. And by extension, it helps you succeed because now you are a strong core piece of their success. And that's going to help drive even more behavior because now they're invested in you. Now they believe in what you're doing. Now they see the opportunities they have. And that's going to drive revenue for you. That's going to drive traffic for you. That's going to build you up and really kind of harness the power of this community. And so when we look at that, that's the ROI. When we're thinking about how do we quantify the value of this? How do we quantify what this means for people? And so for me, when I think about the HubSpot community and I think about the value that it holds for us, it gives us that loyalty and leverage. There's people who, with their honesty, are going to tell you exactly what they think about us. They're going to tell you not only that they love HubSpot, they're going to tell you why. They're going to share successes with you. They're going to talk about what's important. And that is going to create leverage so that other people then want to learn more. Well, if you did this and you were able to see this kind of positive change, maybe I can too. And it's going to give us opinions. It's going to tell us more about how we can improve our product. It's going to tell us more about how we can make the experience better. Are there needs that we didn't realize? And that's also going to help our organic reach. Anytime someone puts an idea on the ideas forum and they wanted something and the product team brings that to fruition and it's announced, those people are always sharing that and creating that organic reach for us, talking about how that was their idea and how it empowered them, made them feel like they got to have a role in the roadmap. That voice the customer is incredibly priceless. Because when we say that we're customer-centric, if we're not having the voice of the customer at the heart of everything that we're doing, then we're really not. That voice of the customer is incredibly powerful so that when you are a part of the HubSpot community, you're not only getting the help that you need, you're able to ask questions, but you're not only going to hear from the HubSpot team, you're going to hear from fellow users who want to help you. If you spend any time in the HubSpot community, what you'll find is a sense of community over competition. There'll be partners who will tell you how to solve something. They won't pitch you. They won't say, well, I can't help you if you don't sign a contract with me. They'll help you. They'll ask you questions. They'll want to learn more about the challenges that you're facing. And that gives them that opportunity to share their expertise. Some of the most powerful and brilliant people I work with are our customers and partners. They know the product up, down, left, right, and they know how to handle a lot of the bigger challenges. So why not let them be the star? Why not let them be subject matter experts? Because that's what they are. When I created the inbound correspondence program last year, it was an opportunity for our top advocates to be able to be a voice for us at Inbound, to be able to share their viewpoint on the sessions that they were participating in. When we're thinking about community, how are we building that? How are we offering that opportunity for people to feel like, I'm not only seen and I'm heard, but I'm appreciated for that they are recognized for the value that they in turn are giving to the community. And if you want to create that love, if you want to create that building of that, you need to think about what steps it's going to take to be able to really define what's important. And I use a lot of metaphors normally. Gardens are usually the best thing for me when I think about community, because you really are planting seeds and it's going to take time. You got to get the soil right. You need to make sure that it's the right type of ingredients and soil and food excuse me, for the type of plants you want to grow. So I would advise you, sorry, I'm choked up. I would advise you to complete the community canvas. It's a minimum viable community, and it creates an opportunity for you to get down to these basic questions so that you can understand what's at the heart of the work. What questions do you need to ask? The community experience. What can they do there? How can they experience things? How can they feel empowered? How can they feel involved? And how can they innovate? This specific diagram is actually for public libraries for kids. And it showcases these individual centers where you have these desired behaviors for the kids who are participating in. By having this in a community setup, it's incredibly powerful because you have the opportunity to treat them like kids. And I mean that in the best possible way. You get to let them explore. You get to let them innovate. You get to let them participate. You get to let them connect in this really intellectually curious space. So you don't have to just have community frameworks that are traditional to build your community. You can really focus on what community experience looks like in other ways and how people can work together. So when you're thinking about planning, you're going to go back to those core questions about why you're doing it, who is involved, and what does this look like for people. If they already have a current community, you need to audit that community. What value are they getting out of it? How do they self-identify? Why do they call themselves something? And why do they call themselves that? How do they align themselves together? And what are the needs of those people? And is there a way for you to be able to uplift them, for you to be able to provide an experience that's better than what they currently have? And thinking about how inclusive or exclusive that community needs to be. And then when we think about the member experience, we're going to focus on what that really looks like. Remember, we want to be very holistic. We want to be very thoughtful and how we're really offering up this journey. It is a community member journey. All the way from onboarding, how do they enter, how do they even know it exists, how do they introduce themselves, all the way up to why do they return? What's in it for them? What's the power of the community that makes it worth it to them? And then how do you engage them and keep it going? Are you going to use specific tools for it? Is there a specific community platform you're going to use? How are you going to determine success? What KPIs are you going to look at for this? Are you going to do a soft launch or hard launch? And how are you going to keep track of those? Are you going to use a calendar? Are you going to use project management software? How are you going to manage? And then remember, community is an incredibly powerful thing, and there is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. So I thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sick, so I've been coughing. But thank you so much for your time. It was lovely chatting with all of you, and I hope that you enjoy community as much as I do. I hope you have a great day.